Welcome to the Sengoku Studies channel. Thank you for joining me. There is not a lot of discussion about artillery and siege weapons or engines prior to the introduction of gunpowder in Japan. In this video, I will be covering the Ōyumi, the name of which means great or large bow, an old piece of Japanese artillery. I apologize if I sound a bit off in this video. At the time of recording, I am congested and stuffed up. This is part of the 2024 monthly collaborative project. If there are other videos from this month, I will link them in the description. Also, the channels for the creators currently on screen will also be in the description. For transparency, most of the specific information, names, dates, documents I'm using in this video come from Carl F. Friday's book Hired Swords, The Rise of Private Warrior Power in Early Japan, specifically pages 41 to 43. Or the Gunbai Ancient Japanese Warfare blog, which will be linked into the description. The earliest records of the Ōyumi place it to the 7th century, and Dr. Friday says that it was clearly in service by the Jinshin War, Jinshin no Ran, which was a war of succession in 672. According to the Honcho Monzui, a mid-11th century compilation of poetry and prose written in Chinese, the regent Jingu had it made after receiving divine inspiration. Unless this was a different Jingu, the timing does not match. Plus, in reality, it most likely came from China, either directly or via Korea. The 7th century was during Japan's Asuka period, Asuka Jidai, and the Ritsuryo military structure was still in place. We have no idea what the Ōyumi looked like. There are no existing images or descriptions from the period they were used in about how they looked. This image here on screen is a much later artist's interpretation of how one might have looked. What is generally agreed upon, though, is that it was most likely some kind of platform-based large crossbow type of weapon, as its name kind of implies. This would make them different than the Shudo, the handheld infantry crossbows that were in limited use around roughly the same time. They do appear to have been an important weapon, though, and while there is nothing about how precisely they worked, we do have some records talking about them in battle. In the provincial regiments, 2 men of each 50-man group was assigned to operate the Ōyumi. According to the Nihon Shoki, it was also used by the 5 guards of the capital. However, it was in the frontier of the northeastern Honshu, in the battles with the hostile groups of the Emishi, that it seemed to shine. It is written in the Nihon Shoki, translated and quoted by Dr. Friday on page 42, quote, "The Ōyumi were lined up and fired at random. The arrows fell like rain." End quote. In this book, Dr. Friday suggests that this could mean that this weapon was capable of loosing multiple arrows at once. The passage does seem to suggest that the arrows were loosed either simultaneously or rapidly. It is possible that the Ōyumi was a large version of the Chinese repeating crossbow. A 9th century petition from Mutsu province, also translated on page 42, states, quote, "When Ōyumi are brought into the fighting, even tens of thousands of barbarians cannot bear up to the arrows of one machine. The savages stand in awe," and this is added, "of its power." End quote. Of course, this is hyperbole. While these sources are extremely limited, it does seem that there was at least the impression at the time that these weapons were very effective when they were used in battle. By the 10th century, there was a decline in the Ōyumi. A passage by the 10th century courtier Miyoshi Kiyotsura from the Honcho Monzui, which is translated and quoted on page 43 of Hired Swords, reads, quote, "At the time of their appointments, those names do not even know of the existence of the weapon called the Ōyumi, still less how to use the springs and bowstrings. Although the realm is now at peace, and we fear nothing from any direction, we must each day be cautious, never forgetting danger. For, however unlikely, what if there should come invading neighbors who challenge us with death? The weapon has become empty nostalgia. Who can use it," this part added, "in our defense?" End quote. This was in reference to instructors who were appointed to teach how to use the Ōyumi. And while it may be hyperbole that none of them even knew that the Ōyumi existed, although it might not be, it does give the sense that there was a severe lack of people with a working knowledge of how the Ōyumi was operated. According to Dr. Friday, between 814 and 901, there were requests from at least 17 provinces for Ōyumi instructors because there was no one in the provincial regiments that knew how to operate them. However, there are scattered accounts through the 11th century of its use, and the last mention of its use in battle was during the Genpei War in the 1180s. So while there was a stark decline in the 10th century, it did remain in some capacity, although probably extremely rare and limited, for a while longer. So that is going to do it for this brief video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found it useful. And a special thank you to my Patreon member, Coulter Nebel. Please consider sharing, liking, and possibly subscribing if you like this video. I hope you will join me again for the next video. Have a wonderful day or night wherever you are. Otsukare-sama deshita.